Why hello there and welcome back to Some Weirdo on the Internet Reviews Obscure Role-Playing Games. And in this episode I'll be looking at a game that I backed on Kickstarter because I like to get the maximum value out of my dollar. Dead Halt was released in 2019 by Zonware and is kinda weird, which is good because I like weird, so let's look at this weird game. Dead Halt is set in a kind of 1980s cyberpunk version of 1996, specifically within the walls of a megalithic hotel. And the thing here is that the floors of the hotel are just kind of like random and weird, so one floor might be more or less normal, and another might be filled with all kinds of alien technology, and another might just open up onto a vast wasteland. So you can have all of these various types of adventures here, but all within this framework of this kind of weird hotel. It's got this kind of absurdist, bizarro quality to it, which I really like, and also it kind of reminds me of Paradise Towers, which is one of my favorite Doctor Who adventures. So overall, the setting is very quirky and unique and very flexible. There isn't that much put into explaining why it's like this, but honestly, I think that's okay. It is a bit of a fault, I find, of modern science fiction to try to over-explain things, and that just ends up, like, restricting what you can do because you will only put out things that you can find a way to make sense. And things don't need to make sense in fiction. It's fiction. So a 4 out of 5 for the setting. It is unique and interesting. There's not really a whole lot to it, but just given the nature of how it works, there's not really all that much that can be given here. Players in Dead Halt take on the role of hotel maintenance crews, who are tasked with doing various jobs around the hotel, which, given the nature of the hotel, could be going up to a floor that's a medieval castle to do battle with an evil wizard, or it could be going to a floor where the walls are made of living flesh to change a light bulb. You know, stuff like that. So let's get into this and make ourselves a character. Character creation begins by selecting from one of 7 races, which provide base attributes and a unique quirk. Also, it is implied that all of the races other than human are uniquely native to the hotel, but this is just an example, so we're going to make a ratfolk. And the ratfolk quirk gives us a +2 bonus on magics rolls, which of course is a thing I will be discussing later. Next, we are given 3 points to increase our attributes. That looks pretty good. Then we can choose one unique item, and just for funsies, let's go with an Atari Lynx. Not sure how that would really come in handy, but if nothing else, we can play Gauntlet, the third encounter when things get slow. Then we calculate our armor value and wound threshold, and all of that other stuff is for later, so this character is done. So that's it. It is pretty basic, but I like basic in games like this that are meant to be a bit more simple and casual. Like, I don't always want to spend an hour and a half making my character. My only real complaint here is that some of the options, like Ratfolk and Goblin, are a little generic in what is a very non-generic game, and the unique options that are provided are just way more interesting than those. So 3 out of 5 for character creation. It is overall good, but I would have really liked to have seen more options that reflected the uniqueness of the setting. The basic mechanics here are fairly simple. When a character wants to do something, they roll a number of dice equal to their rating in the relevant attribute, then count up all the dice that came up with 4 or higher, and consult a chart to see how well they did. Combat is actually basically the same and isn't really that complicated, but I'm going to cut away to the illustration anyway because that's just how I do things around here. Okay, so the first notable aspect here is the way in which enemies are defined. Specifically, they are only given attacks, armor value, and wound threshold. In other words, only the statistics that you need to actually fight them. Attacks are made the same as any other checks using an attribute specified by the weapon being used, which may also provide bonus dice. Attacks deal damage equal to the weapon's wound value for each die that comes up 4 or higher, which is then reduced by the target's armor value. And of course, enemy attacks work basically the same, except that the number of dice being rolled is specified by the attack rather than a combination of weapon and attribute. Now, when a character's damage reaches their wound threshold, something interesting happens. Rather than dying, they are whisked off to receive medical attention, and then returned a little while later with a shiny new cybernetic modification, which grants them a bonus to one attribute and a special ability. Magics are also interesting here because rather than being a specific skill only available to specialized characters, it is a thing that everyone can do, but you still need to be specialized to do it well. Using magics requires a knowledge roll, but instead of counting successes, you add all the dice together, plus any bonuses, like say from the Ratfolk origin quirk. Then consult a chart which gives a general guideline of how powerful the effect can be, but other than that, the specifics are entirely up to the player. And that's it, and overall I like it. I really like the cybernetic modifications. I like how whenever you die, you get to come back but be a little bit stronger than before. But also, if you get too many of those, you become more machine than man, and you just lose your mind and run off into the depths of the hotel. So, in a way, you also kind of have, like, extra lives. I also really like the magic system. I like how it's not restricted to specific characters, but also it really pays off if you specialize in it. And, like, just in general, I have this view on magic systems, which is a good magic system needs to either say exactly what magic can do, or say that magic can just kinda do whatever. And I kinda prefer the latter because I feel like it encourages more creative play and also requires fewer rules. However, my one complaint here actually is lack of rules, because one thing that is not specified but definitely should have been is how much damage you can deal with magics, because that seems like a pretty likely thing that players are going to try to do with their magics. So a 3.5 out of 5 for mechanics. There's a lot of really neat ideas here, but some of them just need to be defined a little bit better. Alright, so overall this book is well written, things are explained well. Honestly, not a lot to say about that. That's why I stuck these two sections of the video together. But there is something to say about the presentation, which is that it is very nice. The overall layout is very simplistic, but like in a good way, and for the size and length of this book, there is a lot of artwork in there, and the artwork is very nice, and it is used very well to illustrate things, because that's what illustrations are for. Also, the page breaks are all really good. Like, there is not a single paragraph in this book that breaks across 2 pages, and I know that's not actually a hard thing to do, but that's where the bar is, apparently. So a 3 out of 5 for writing. It's well written, but nothing noteworthy, and a 4 out of 5 for presentation. It looks really nice, and yeah, just a good looking book overall. So even the best games generally tend to fall short somewhere, and I believe it's obvious that where I'm going with this is that this game is lacking in the content. The biggest issues are enemies, of which there are only 2 listed in the entire book, and items, which there are just like a handful of sprinkled throughout. And like, they do include a big list of items that you can get from the gashapon. Oh yeah, characters in this game get their items randomly distributed from a giant gashapon in the basement of the hotel. That is wacky and fun, and just another thing that I like about this game. But where was I? Yeah, so there's a list, but they don't actually tell you what any of those items are, But there is a note telling you that you can go to the publisher's website to get all of the items. However, as of the recording of this video, those items are not available, and just in general, this is an idea that I am not particularly fond of, because I've seen quite a few games, like from the early 2000s web publishing boom, that would say, go to our website for this, that, and the other thing, and then you go to the website and the website is no longer there. It can be a problem in the future. There's also only like the vaguest instructions for how to create your own enemies and weapons and such, and if you don't have room to put in a lot of content, you need to at least give good guidelines on how to create that content yourself, because people are going to need to create content to play the game. And like, yeah, you can still do that with just a handful of examples, but you're not going to be really confident on like how good the content you're making is and if it's appropriately leveled for things, and just, you gotta have some good guidelines. So a 2 out of 5 for content. It is lacking, but not to the point of being unplayable. You are definitely going to have to make some stuff yourself, but it doesn't seem like it's really that difficult. And there we have it, Dead Halt. A game with a unique concept and a lot of really neat ideas, but one that definitely leaves you wanting more. And presumably more is coming. I am reviewing this less than 2 months after receiving the game from the Kickstarter, so I think they've got a little bit of time to release all that extra content. So overall, it's just a neat, quirky, weird little game, and one that I definitely recommend checking out. It seems like a lot of wacky fun, and wacky fun is the best kind of fun. Alright, thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure to hit all the lovely buttons, and if there are any games that you think I need to take a look at, you can tell me about them in the comments. Well, until next time.